A man that deserves more credit than what he receives. A man that took a stand in American history. A man who is often forgotten despite his invention of the rocket that launched American astronauts to the moon to protect us during the Cold War, on top of creating missiles that will be fired upon the enemy. He is Dr. Wernher Von Braun. Von Braun was born on March 23, 1912 in Rutgers, Germany, which is current-day Poland. After Wernher von Braun's Lutheran confirmation, his mother gave him the telescope and he developed a passion for astronomy. He would later use this to envision a future not for himself, but for citizens around the world. Von Braun jump-started his dream when he graduated from the Technical University of Berlin with a degree in mechanical engineering. This helped him succeed in building the V-2 rocket. After his graduation, Von Braun joined the Army Rocket Center and soon became a director there. In 1939, the Nazis demanded Von Braun to join them, for the reason that he wanted to further his project. Wernher saw no other choice but to join. This assignment would be later known as the V-2 rocket. It was meant to be launched at his specific target far away. In 1942, the launch was successful. In addition, it inspired him to build the Saturn V rocket. The Saturn V rocket was a rocket that took Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin to the moon. After Von Braun invented the V-2 rocket with his colleagues, Himmler, the leading member of the Nazi Party, had taken control of all the labor camps. Now with an increase in labor force at hand, he decided that most of them will help assemble the rockets. Ultimately, this was not Von Braun's first choice. However, he was forced to go along with Himmler's plan. Hitler became very interested in the V-2 rocket, also known as A4. Hitler soon asked Von Braun if it could be used for military reasons. Von Braun strongly disagreed, so he refused to work with Hitler. Before he took a stand, on March 22, 1944, Von Braun was arrested and was taken to a Gestapo cell in Stettin, where he was imprisoned for 2 weeks. That was when Himmler took full control over the rocket program. The secret army had no choice but to persuade Hitler to release Von Braun so that the V-2 program could continue. At the end of World War II, Von Braun noticed that the Russians were 90 miles away from attacking. He knew in his mind if the Russians captured him, they would force him to work to their own means under the threat of their family's life.
And at the end of the war, they said that they were given 2 sets of orders from the German government. One set of orders told them to stay in place and protect everything they had and stay there in Peenemünde. And another set of orders told them to take everything they had and flee and hide with it. And then they went to a mountain resort. While they were there, they sat around talking about, well, what should we do? And they actually, surprisingly, had a democratic vote. Even though they had all been under the German Reich prior to this, they voted to decide, as Dr. von Braun said, into whose hands shall we place this brainchild of ours? Because they knew that that powerful ballistic missile that they had built, they knew that it was a powerful and dangerous weapon.
During the aftermath of World War II, a secret military operation codenamed Paperclip by the OSS recruited scientists from fallen Nazi Germany. Operation Paperclip was meant to take all of the former Nazi scientists to America, including Von Braun.
He and his team, of course, chose to surrender to the Americans very deliberately, and their choice was sort of surrender to the Russians or surrender to the Americans. And I know when they moved to El Paso, which is where the whole team came with Operation Paperclip originally, they went to El Paso, Texas.
His participation in Operation Paperclip saved him from having to attend the Nuremberg trials, thus quickly making him well known in the operation. The Nuremberg trials was when the former Nazi scientist superiors went on trial. The outcome largely resulted in death. There were an estimated amount of 500 scientists that were deployed all over the country. The operation required Von Braun to hide in Fort Bliss, Texas. His first assignment as a United States citizen was for the U.S. Army to work on the ballistic missile. This is what helped us during the Cold War. Von Braun was a part of a secret Army and Navy project that would create a satellite. This project was unsuccessful until the Soviets launched the first satellite, Sputnik 1 and Sputnik 2. This led up to the Great Space Race. On January 31st, 1958, Von Braun launched the Explorer 1, the first U.S. satellite. In the same year, Dwight Eisenhower signs the order to create the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, also known today as NASA. Later on, in May of 25th, 1961, Kennedy made the boldest move of his life when he said that the U.S. will land on the moon by the end of the century.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone.
This is where the Saturn-class rockets came into play. Von Braun invented the Saturn rockets, designing and building night and day. This is what gave our country hope. He was the head director of the Space Center, overseeing his creation being built. Then, on July 16, 1969, he saw his creation light up in the sky and change mankind for the greater good. The legacy of his creation provided a gateway to explore uncharted territory and discover a new era of space history. However, Von Braun does not stop there. He continues to work on other projects, for example, the Space Shuttle. The Space Shuttle was a remarkable machine. It was meant to carry payloads up to the space station. It was also meant to repair and station space satellites into low Earth orbit. This was important because it was reusable and more cost-effective. One of his final and one of his most important projects was designing the International Space Station. This was a highlight of his career because it was the first project that incorporated Russia and America working together in a space laboratory. This is what helped the two nations become better friends. The International Space Station is a low Earth orbit space lab that many countries use. The ISS does experiments such as growing a plant in space. One test was the effect on bones and muscle loss. All of these experiments wouldn't have happened without Wernher von Braun, the pioneer of space. Von Braun took a stand by defeating the Soviets in the space race and by building missiles that will protect our nation from any threats that may exist. For example, the Cold War. The Cold War was about military power. Whoever had the biggest bomb controlled the world. Von Braun had the chance to help, and he did, by building a missile that could go around the world to help the U.S. Wernher von Braun deserves to be remembered as one of the best scientists of the 20th century. His life and career is a symbol of hope to engineers and scientists by giving them a model to reaching to the stars. He has worked on weapons of mass destruction in the name of duty to one's nation. He has attempted to work with the Nazi regime in return for the resources to carry out the research closest to one's heart. He was truly a 20th century legend. After 5 years since the first launch of the Saturn V, von Braun decided to retire in the year of 1972 from NASA. He retired at the age of 60. Von Braun continued to invent and create new projects, including working for Fairchild Industries. This was a satellite industry that he later became the CEO of. Wernher von Braun made his final journey to the stars on June 16, 1977, when he passed away. In 1943 and 1944, he was honored with the War Merit Cross First Class with Swords and the Knight Cross of War Merit Cross. Wernher von Braun had many other achievements, such as creating the world's first educational space science camp program for children. Later on, in 2007, he was inducted into the U.S. Space Camp Hall of Fame.
But also, I think his achievements as a scientist were really in being visionary, and really saying, yeah, we can do this, and we can actually go to the moon, when, of course, a lot of people said, that'll never happen, that's impossible.